morning, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube, as well as the Grid Network YouTube channel and on X. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. It is great to be with you on a jam-packed Monday. We got golf. We've got college football. We got NFL draft, so my second mock draft coming up toward the end of the show. We got NBA playoffs. 4 of the 8 matchups are dead set. Get to that, obviously, throughout today's show, particularly the play-in matchups. You got Magic Hawks trying to get that 7th spot, which is a DOA spot because the Celtics are going to sweep or gentlemen sweep that team. But it's still an interesting matchup. And then more so, my Golden State Warriors hosting the Memphis Grizzlies. Get to that later on today's show. Very excited to discuss it. A number of things going on. A message I have for the NBA media as we enter the postseason. Start with the postseason, so to speak, starts tomorrow. The playoffs obviously start on Saturday. All kinds of things going on in the National Football League with the draft, in the NBA with the playoffs, in golf with the Masters. So let's get right into it. But first, one could make the case that the 3 biggest, or at least most entertaining, American sports events happen in 3 consecutive months. Super Bowl in February, March Madness in, March, bleeding in April, and then in April, the Masters, which, by the way, then gets followed by the NBA playoffs for 2 months, NHL playoffs, NFL draft sandwich in between. This is a great time to be a sports fan, to say the very least. I will be completely transparent with the audience right now when I say I am certainly not the diehard golf fan that I am NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, to a degree, even WNBA. I followed that for years, even pre-Caitlin Clark. But what we just saw yesterday at Augusta was one of the, you don't even have to be a golf diehard to understand the significance, the entertainment, the drama that came with Rory McIlroy becoming the 6th player of all time, the 6th golfer ever to be a Grand Slam winner. We can show you this graphic of the list, and these are some of, this is royalty in golf. You got Gary Player recently, Nicklaus, Gene Sarazen, Ben Hogan, Tiger Woods, who had the greatest prime of any athlete of the last 50 years. And then now, most recently, yesterday, Rory McIlroy. I wish we had the rights to show you the last putt at the end. I wish we had the rights to show you like a whole 15 on to the playoff after 18, in which Rory McIlroy, this has been an 11-year monkey that he has had on his back, trying to reach history, trying to become the 6th ever Grand Slam winner in golf history. And he's got it in his sights. This is coming after one of the greatest shots in Masters history on 15. It was, absurd. Any golf analyst that I've seen last night today will tell you that's one of the most difficult shots they've ever seen in their life. 18, he gets, I think he was in the bunker. In the bunker, gets out of it, and we're thinking, oh my gosh, Rory's going to do this. All he's got to do is sink this putt, and he missed it left. And when you consider what this guy has been through professionally over the last 11 years, all the times he was so close and couldn't quite get the job done. It's the equivalent of if, Josh Allen faced Patrick Mahomes a decade from now. Let's say he was like 0-7 against Mahomes in the playoffs, had a game-winning drive in his sights in overtime and threw a pick. At that point, we're like, okay, he's just never going to beat Mahomes. That's just that he's never going to beat Mahomes. At that point, every golf fan in America, every sports fan was like, gosh darn it, Rory's just never going to put on that green jacket. It's going to be his good friend Justin Rose who's going to do it. And Rory, like the great, and I mean the transcendent all-time of the all-time great athletes do, they get their, just heart broken, stab all of it into a trillion pieces. Deep breath, compose themselves. And again, considering the last 11 years for Rory in the playoff, and did what he had to do, took the Masters in hand. It was one of the great sports moments that you will see. It was one of the most, it's as compelling of sports television as you will see. And for Rory, a guy who is universally beloved around golf, one of the great ambassadors for the sport. And listen, I have talked often about the PGA and LIV Golf divide over the last couple of years. I think, listen, those that have been if you want to be anti-LIV, fine. If you want to be anti-golfers going to LIV, I would say to that, let's see if you're offered hundreds of millions of dollars, and let's see if you're going to still stay on your moral high ground. With that being said, Rory was one of the few that said, no, I'm not doing it. From a morality standpoint, I don't want to do it. And so maybe for some, the purest of golf, the PGA fans out there, they're not pissed that Bryson kind of fell apart yesterday and that Rory did fall apart multiple times, especially at 18. We're like, oh my God, Rory's dead. He's going to fall apart again. And then composed himself, got the job done, and you saw the reaction when he sunk the putt to get the job done, to clinch the Masters, to clinch a Grand Slam. And, I mean, just literally it is joy, it is pain, it is all of those days, all of those years trying to reach to that point. Falls on his knees, breaks down in tears. You see the moment with his wife, with his 4-year-old daughter at the end. It was, and he's just, I mean, all smiles. The monkey is off his back, Steve Young style, and back in 1994. It was truly a great sports moment. It was a great human moment to watch. Shout out to Rory. That was unbelievable television. Shout out to Justin Rose as well for putting up one heck of a fight. And the Masters always delivers, and boy, somehow found a way to step it up another gear. And so shout out to Rory McIlroy, a Grand Slam winner, the 6th golfer in history to accomplish such a feat. Congrats to you, Rory. All right, transitioning now to college football. So, you know, when the Vol View first became a segment, I believe it was August of 2023, so about a year and a half ago, it was an idea that my incredible mother had. Shout out to you, Mom. I know you're watching. And she was like, do a segment about Tennessee and, talking about the Vols and whatever. And we were trying to come up with names, and she suggested Vol View. Now, I suggested Volunteer Viewpoint. I guess the Vol View is stuck. So I think she was right in that one. She is, I will say this just quickly, she has been my ultimate consultant as far as producing. Listen, I've mostly run this show over the last 5.5 years, but if there's one, if I could list one human being as a producer, it would be her. So shout out to her for that. So the Vol View, I really give her a ton of credit on. So with that said, it was kind of created as like my one niche segment per week during the college football season. My entire show, I talk whatever's important. That's why I just talked to Rory. Whatever's, if the NBA's popping, talk about the NBA. If WNBA's popping, talk about the WNBA. NFL's always popping, so it's almost always going to make the show. Major League Baseball, the playoffs last year, World Series is great. Whatever is going big in the world of sports, whatever is relevant, I have an obligation to the audience to talk about it. And frankly, it's easier to do a show when I talk about the more interesting things. Well, I find Tennessee football more interesting the most because I'm a Tennessee fan. Well, over the last few days, Tennessee football has been a major story in the world of college football, which they're a big program, but even beyond the SEC. Because of a situation that happened, it developed late last week, bled into Saturday, which happened to be Tennessee's spring football game, the orange and white game in Knoxville, in which their quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, is no longer with the program. So, never thought I'd be doing this in mid-April, but here we go. The Vol View starts right now.
In Tennessee.
All right, the Vol View begins right now. So here's how it happened. End of last week, starting quarterback for the Tennessee Vols, Nico Iamaleava, did not show up for practice, did not show up to some of the spring practices because of a contract dispute. He currently made about $2 million per year from Tennessee. He wanted to double and pay up to $4 million. Wake up Saturday morning and I see, Nico is no longer a Vol. Josh Heupel announces it, head coach of the Vols. Josh Heupel announces it, and he said, I believe this was after the spring game, it's the state of college football. At the end of the day, no one is ever bigger than the program. That includes me too. We've got an opportunity. We've got a bunch of guys who are going to give their all for Tennessee. We move forward, got a great group. Let's go compete, end quote. So Josh Heupel very much clearly putting his foot down and saying this, and kudos to him for saying this program's not about me either. Because some coaches, we know how it is in college football where you're in small towns. It's not like, listen, there are exceptions, USC, Miami, Texas, programs that are in big markets in the country where the coach doesn't have, it's not so much of a dictatorship as it is by and large around the country in college football. Tennessee, that's the case. I love me some Knox Vegas. I love me some Knoxville. But that could be the case if Heupel allowed it to be, and he held himself accountable there as a former player, former Heisman Trophy finalist, I believe. So let's play all three sides of this because I think there's a hierarchy for who to put heat on. So let's start at the bottom. Who to put the least amount of heat on. That to me is clearly and obviously, I think most people agree, the Tennessee football program deserves the least amount of flack. You can't have a guy who, and this will sort of bleed into Nico, but you can't have a guy who had a good season, unbelievable high upside player, was a 5-star recruit, number 1 quarterback out of Los Angeles in high school. I believe he was the number 3 quarterback in his class. Arch Manning was number 1. That was a great quarterback class. Nico was number 3 in the nation among high school quarterbacks. Goes to Tennessee. If you go back to the Vol View last year, I had high expectations for this kid, and he was good. He was a good player. Redshirt freshman, all of it. He was good. You can't have that guy then come and say, hey, double my pay. So that transitions me to Nico because Tennessee stands on business. It's the program first. It's about the power T first. We're going to stick to our guns. And by the way, even if you had paid Nico, would that not have caused some fissures in the locker room? This is the first situation in the new NIL era, which I will get to later in the segment, where you saw a guy literally hold out for a contract, or at least a notable player hold out for a contract and not get the bag, at least from said program. Somebody will pay Nico. He will be on a roster next year. So Tennessee is 100% in the right and standing on business. Let's transition to Nico now, because this is where I think it gets interesting, because I think he holds the second most amount of, or should get the second most amount of flack, so to speak, the second most amount of criticism among the 3 players in this instance. So Nico is, again, an exceptionally talented young man. He's about 6'6", got a big-time arm, mobile, brings all the necessary tools to the table that you can develop into being a high-profile, high-standard quarterback. Where Nico messed up, and I think this is not quite as indicative on Nico as it is the people around Nico. I hope he doesn't mind this. Not Nico, but the person I'm about to mention. I hope he doesn't mind this. Matter of fact, I won't even mention his name just to be professional. He can say that later. I have a source very close to me that told me before Nico's took his first snaps as the Tennessee starting quarterback. I think this might have been after the Cheez-It Bowl a couple of seasons ago when Joe Milton declared for the draft. Joe Milton, now a Dallas Cowboy, and Nico got to start that bowl game against Iowa, played really well. Tennessee blowed Iowa, the whole bit. Might have been around that time. It might have been toward the start of last season. Said source told me that they knew of the people around Nico, and most notably his dad, his family, the people around him, and said, this kid has the wrong voices in his head. This kid does not have the requisite, agents or business people around him to put him in position to be successful as it pertains to off-field endeavors, which could then bleed into on-field endeavors like it did in this instance. And so I put more heat on the adults in this situation surrounding Nico. Now, not that Nico doesn't deserve blame. Nico was the one who skipped spring camp. Nico was the one who asked for a bonus in pay after we can show you the numbers against, let's take out the games against the crappy teams, against the guaranteed W's for Tennessee. Let's take out that out-of-conference game against NC State. NC State was not a good team in the ACC last year. Let's show Nico Iamaleava's stats against the SEC. Put him up there. Not much to write home about. 8 games against the SEC, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks. threw for essentially exactly 200 pass yards per game, and he completed 63% of his throws. With excellent wideouts, a great O-line, a great running game, and a brilliant offensive head coach in Josh Heupel. Now, I think Nico's going to improve. My expectation for Tennessee in 2025 was going to be, I don't want to say like championship as a national championship, but could we compete to finally get to Atlanta, to finally get to the SEC title game, which we haven't done in nearly 2 decades? Sure. With 10-2 last year, Nico again put up those stats, but we had a great running game, great defense. Heupel had all the pieces. So it's completely reasonable to think Nico, as a young kid, could improve a year from now. That's the whole point of college football, is to develop into being an NFL prospect. And so I think that would have improved. But it is absurd for Nico and his representation, the people around him, to go to Tennessee and say, hey, after, let's keep it real, a mediocre at best season, particularly against the top competition, that we want to raise. That's bad business, that's bad negotiating, and it shows the people around Nico do not know what they're doing whatsoever. That, to me, is where the biggest slice of the get on Nico pie goes. To me, Nico individually, his mistake was listening to these people, which fractured his relationships in the locker room, which now puts Tennessee in a spot where the quarterback options they have right now, they got this kid, I think Merklinger is his name. He's a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman. We'll see what he does. I'm not totally convinced he'll be Tennessee's starter. I would be shocked if the Vols don't go hunting in the transfer portal this spring. So that's the Nico side of it. Tennessee deserves almost no blame. Nico and his representation deserve a lot of blame. Not as much as the NCAA. And I have been going at these folks, at this sham of an organization, since Carving It Up began in 2019. This is the same NCAA that for years refused to accept the crazy idea that maybe athletes, college athletes, who make millions upon millions of dollars for the respective programs, can't get a slice of that pie. Because it's amateur athletics. It's about the education. Guys, yes, in most instances. But Zion Williamson did not go to Duke to get a college education. Okay? Caleb Williams did not go to Oklahoma and then transfer to USC to get a college education. It helps. It can maybe aid you off the field. But once you make the pros, once you make the NBA and NFL and have any level of success, mission accomplished. That's the goal of college football. And let's be honest. I go to a few Tennessee games a year. I'm sure we all go to college football games any chance we get. We are not showing up to see the guys play because they're excellent students. The ones that are, God bless them. The biggest shouts out in the world to them. But the superstar, that is not their main goal. It's like, it's not. And the NCAA, for some, this misplaced sense of self-righteousness, found themselves unable to accept that very basic fact. It literally took until a 6-3 majority conservative Supreme Court said, hey, guys, your business model is illegal. Stop. They finally accepted NIL. But they accepted NIL, and as a result, or in some part, the transfer portal, and said, y'all figure it out. The athletes, the people around the athletes, the programs, y'all figure it out. Not like we're the ones in charge or anything. We'll let everybody below us figure out. We'll micromanage and that's being kind. We'll let you guys figure it out. As opposed to, I don't know, setting guardrails, enforcing policies, making it so that it's not an absolute discombobulated mess. To where Carson Beck gets $4 million. Nico sees that and says, better than Carson Beck. For the record, I think he is better than Carson Beck. I don't think Beck's very good at all. And he says, why can't I get that? College football needs 2 major policies. One with NIL and another with the transfer portal. And I think they're pretty darn simple. There has to be a salary cap. Point blank. So listen, I have been in the past with the only major sport, major professional American league that does not have a salary cap, Major League Baseball. I have been very pro no salary cap with that sport because my mindset is that there's the Dodgers, there's the Yankees, there's the Mets, there's the Red Sox, there's the Cubs, there are St. Louis Cardinals. There are certain organizations that just generate more revenue than the Tampa Bay Rays or the Arizona Diamondbacks. But there are also some franchises, some organizations like the Pittsburgh Pirates, like the Seattle Mariners, like others who just won't pay, who do not have it as a top priority to get the very best talent on their roster as soon as possible to put your team in position to compete for a World Series. There's some owners that just will not spend. So my mindset is, okay, then what's the point of having a salary cap if you won't spend anyway? College football is different because you have the disparity between an Ohio State, a USC, a Texas. The premier USC is obviously not on the level of the other two right now, but I'm talking in terms of revenue generated. They're in a class of their own as opposed to Vanderbilt, Rutgers. They're just not in the SMU. Like they're just not in the same. We're not playing by the same rules here as it pertains to salary cap, or as it pertains to revenue generated. Institute a salary cap. As it relates to the transfer portal, I think it's pretty simple. Just like the NFL has a period of free agency, just like it's like the NBA, Major League Baseball, periods of free agency, have a transfer period. You can have it post-spring. So if the guy, again, Joe Burrow is a prime example. Joe Burrow was not able to be, I think it was J.T. Barrett, and I forget, it might have been the late Dwayne Haskins, God rest his soul, but I don't think he was able to beat either of those two guys. So Joe Burrow transferred post-spring at Ohio State to LSU, and Joe Burrow 2 years later became a college football legend. So post-spring practices all the way up to a month before the regular season. So let's put this from like April 28th, sometime late April, to July 28th. So like a 3-month period for the transfer portal. And then the other period can be post-bowl games. Once all the minor bowl games have been played, or even the big ones, Rose Bowl, the New Year's Six Bowls, as they used to be called, once those have been played, institute that portal process, that portal period, from then until the start of spring practices. That's it, because it can't just be a Wild West. You can just Tom Izzo talked about this during March Madness. Like there were guys who were transferring in the middle of the tournament once their teams got eliminated. That can't happen. That's it, again, Wild West. It is the NCAA being the discombobulated mess. And again, I have just want to make this abundantly clear and clarify myself. I have been as pro NIL as any pundit that you will see in anywhere, because I think, again, as the Supreme Court, I think, stated the obvious 4 years ago, you can't just make millions of dollars for a corporation, for a business, and get nothing. You can't do that. If you're one of the major players to that business making set amount of money, you can't do that. It's illegal. And so, but there does have to be guardrails. There does have to be policies put in place in order to ensure that there is some level of stability and organization. Two things the NCAA seem to be allergic to forever, which is why in the long run, I think college football just needs a commissioner in general, as opposed to the NCAA running everything. But to circle this all back home, Tennessee stood on business, stood on their program, understood that if we were to cave to this guy, and by the way, if Nico was Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, number one picks of years past, heck, Kyler Murray even, like a dude who's like, okay, this guy could be the first pick in the draft. This is a transcendent talent, one of the best we've seen in our school's history. And by the way, Tennessee once had Peyton Manning, so they've seen great. By the way, Peyton Manning, if Peyton Manning played in the modern day, if it were a situation like that, then pay him. You pay those guys. You pay those superstars. Okay, Colorado, you pay Shedeur Sanders. You pay Travis Hunter. Okay, whatever they need, you pay them. Which is, again, part why I think we need a salary cap, so that there is a number to go off of relative to the salary cap. And by the way, you can raise it like the NFL does. But I just think we are in a spot with college football and with college sports in general where I can be pro NIL and pro transfer portal, but there does have to be guardrails in this. And as for Nico, this kid has got to get better, got to get smarter people around him business-wise. Because we talk about, oh, Nico might have cost himself money elsewhere. Some program may not pay him what he's wanting to get. Whatever. That to me is not what I'm worried about so much as it's going to hurt him on the field. The Tennessee Volunteers are, Wes Rucker, shout out to Wes Rucker, who covers the Vols for a living, does a great job. Love to get him on the show at some point. But he put out a great tweet if I could pull this up on my phone here, because I thought it summed up the situation beautifully. Because he was talking about how Nico really hurt himself business-wise. Here it is. This Nico Iamaleava kid is really talented, and he's looking for a guaranteed QB1 job and a system built for him, as well as a few $1 million and a college football playoff supporting cast in his draft year. Tennessee's got to be at the top of his list, right? The heck's his family thinking? So, and again, not to take the heat off Nico, but it is a situation where he's got bad advice around him, and a source that I know very well told me that was the case about 1.5 years ago, and it's materialized. So that's where we're at. Tennessee, for as far as the Tennessee Vols 2025 season, barring they land a transfer quarterback in during this spring process, they're not in as good a shape as they were 7 days ago as it relates to competing for a college football playoff spot, and certainly competing to be in the SEC title game in Atlanta. And that's where we're at. It's because Nico had bad business people surrounding him, and because the NCAA, per their history, refuses to work and put in a system in place that actually makes a tiny bit of sense. That is it for this week's edition of the Vol View. All right, so game my take on that. Be back after the break to talk. What do we got next to the dock? Is it mock draft? We got is it Warriors? Crap. Hold on, just checking, make sure I'm the dock. I got so hyped about the Nico thing. Yeah, okay. So come back after the break, discuss my mock draft 2.0. Very excited for you guys to see it after the break on Carving Up Live. Don't miss it. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. I should have said this at the top of the show, but this show is pre-recorded, so we're right now, it's 11:51 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show, I guess, right now at this point is 6:28 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So again, as I always say, if there's anything in the world of sports that has happened that I am aware of, if there's anything in the world of sports that has happened, I'm aware of it, just not the time that you are watching me. So I did my first mock draft last week, 1.0. I liked it, felt good about it. But I made some changes. I made some revisions, especially at the top in the first 5 picks. Number 1, I think, feels almost guaranteed at this point. Cam Ward of the Titans, spoiler alert. But the shakeup, okay, we all agree on who the 2 best players are in this draft. Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. Where do they go? Last time I said Abdul Carter was going to the Browns, Travis Hunter to the New York Giants. Well, and by the way, the biggest story, where the heck does Shedeur Sanders land? Well, you're about to get the answer to that. Let's get the background music going. My mock draft 2.0, and here we go. We will start mock draft 2.0. Here we go. Let's go and start with the first 4 picks of this draft. Put them up there. Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami. We don't need to break that down. I think that's pretty obvious. The Titans need a quarterback. Cam Ward is the best quarterback in the draft. Travis Hunter, I have him and Abdul Carter swapped from where they were last week. Travis Hunter, cornerback receiver out of Colorado, goes to the Browns. Again, Cleveland, I think, needs to reset the organization in every way, shape, and form. Travis Hunter will be able to help them defensively. I think he'll play receiver. At this point, why are we against him playing wide receiver when he's done it his entire life, when he did it in college football? We've seen Shohei Ohtani in Major League Baseball crush it. I get it's a different sport, playing both positions, or playing, being a pitcher and being an elite offensive force, on the other side. But I think Travis is an unbelievable talent, once in a generation that can do both sides. Travis Hunter, the 2nd pick overall to the Cleveland Browns. Abdul Carter is the best player in the draft. He goes to the Giants. Again, it's a classic, and I think this is how this draft's going to play out: a best player on the board draft as opposed to a fit draft. At least it is in the top 5. At least Giants, one of their few weaknesses, or one of their few strengths, is defensive line. They're an excellent defensive line, but Abdul Carter is not as a monster pass rusher. By the way, he also posted a Lawrence Taylor social media tweet, I think it was, the other day. So Abdul Carter, 3rd pick overall to the New York Giants. Will Campbell to New England Patriots, tackle out of LSU. The number one priority for New England has to be to protect Drake May. He is their number one asset. You can draft receivers later. You got to get a tackle to protect this kid. Those are my first 4 picks. So next 4, Mason Graham was the guy that fell all the way to 15 in this draft to Atlanta, because again, outside of the top 5, and once we get past that, I think teams are going to look more towards need as opposed to best player on the board. Mason Graham, okay, defensive tackle out of Michigan, is a monster. He goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars in this draft. Ashton Genty, I had him going to the Raiders last draft. I had him going to the Raiders this go around. I'll see if that remains the case before 3.0. But again, Pete Carroll, he had his most success when he had a great defense in Seattle, when he had a great running back in Marshawn Lynch. By the way, Pete Carroll had his most success in college at USC with an all-time great college back in Reggie Bush. So I could see him kind of going around that same sort of philosophy. Is Genty the first running back off the board, to me, is the question. Right now, it appears that will be the case. Genty to the Raiders at number 6. I had the Jets taking Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. This time I have him going Kelvin Banks. So again, they could draft Shedeur Sanders. I'm not ruling out they draft Shedeur Sanders. They obviously need a quarterback. As I always say, the Jets are the franchise where all young quarterbacks' dreams go to die. Well, the Jets and the Cleveland Browns. But right now, this is Aaron Glenn coming in. He needs to institute a culture. I think he is more than capable of doing that if Woody Johnson doesn't interfere. The offensive line with the Jets has been a disaster for years. It was the number one concern when Aaron Rodgers signed there 2 years ago, when Aaron was still at least closer to his prime than he is now. Kelvin Banks will help shore up that offensive line tackle to Texas. He goes number 7. Jalen Walker to the Panthers. I had the Panthers going Jalen Walker last mock draft, have them going this time. They need some help. They need a pass rusher around the edge. Jalen Walker to Carolina. Here's the interesting part. Shedeur Sanders goes to the Saints. Last mock draft, I had him falling to 21, and my Pittsburgh Steelers. The Derek Carr news changes everything for me, because my mindset is this: okay, for all of the rebuilding that the Saints have to do as it relates to their cap situation, all of it, Derek Carr was at the very least going to be a stabilizing force. Is he great? Not even close. Is he good? Depends on the Sunday. But stabilizing force. Now that he's gone, either the Saints can just dog it, tank Kellen Moore, barring something crazy, and we're all talking about Kellen Moore, so who knows? But Kellen Moore is safe in his job. So they could dog it, tank 2-3 wins, and go out and get Arch Manning, a guy like that, potentially in next year's draft. Or they could decide, I don't know, Shedeur Sanders is used to playing behind less than ideal offensive lines at Colorado. He's used to playing with the supporting cast that is not of the level of a Texas, of an Ohio State, of programs like that, of a Notre Dame. He's used to playing with that, so the Saints should not be that much of an adjustment. I get it's the NFL, but he's deadly accurate. He moves well. The arm strength isn't quite what you'd like, but guess where the Saints play? Indoors, in a dome, in New Orleans. So that's not going to be as much of an issue, certainly for home games. And playing down south, the weather won't be as much of a factor. Shedeur Sanders, I have going to the New Orleans Saints. I have the Bears going Omarion Hampton, running back in North Carolina. I had them going Armand Membo, who I have in the next pick in just a second, to San Francisco. But my mindset is this. Obviously the Bears have needed to address their offensive line for a while. I think they mostly did that in free agency, getting a center, getting Joe Thuney. Omarion Hampton will help solidify a run game that was utterly disastrous last year and was not able to support Caleb Williams over the course of his rookie season. So you give Caleb Williams the weapons that he's got now. You give him an improved offensive line. You give him a guy I think is a brilliant offensive mind in Ben Johnson, and now you give him a running game in Omarion Hampton, who, I'll be honest, I think is the best running back in this year's draft. Hampton goes to the Bears. Armand Membo goes to the Niners. Listen, Trent Williams is getting up there in age. If Brock Purdy, it appears, is going to be the long-term future, let's go and protect him as much as we can do so. Membo goes to the 49ers. Tech McMillan to the Cowboys. So listen, I had the Cowboys going Hampton. To me, the Cowboys offense, I've said since 2022, is not that talented, and it's gotten worse. CeeDee Lamb is an unbelievable talent receiver. He's as productive as they come. That is all they have. Outside of that, offensive line, shambles. Zach Martin just retired. Running game, non-existent. So they could go Hampton. I had the Cowboys going with him in the last mock draft. Or they could, if Hampton's on the board at this point, they could decide to say, let's just go and get a true, 1A type of wide receiver. Think of it as what the Vikings have with Jordan Addison as the 1A to Justin Jefferson's 1. Ted McMillan, best receiver in this year's draft, goes to Dallas at number 12. Next 4 picks. I had Josh Simmons, tackle out of Ohio State, going to the Dolphins. Last mock draft, that remains the case. If there's any quarterback that's a veteran that needs protection, it is Tua Tagovailoa, given his unfortunate injury history. Simmons goes to Miami. Tyler Warren, if there's any team that needs a tight end, is the Indianapolis Colts. Tyler Warren, by far the best tight end in this year's draft, goes to the Colts. James Pierce, just got done talking about the Vols. James Pierce goes to the Atlanta Falcons. Out of, from my favorite team, University of Tennessee, Falcons desperately need help on the pass rush. They've tried to address it in recent years. It hasn't worked. Let's just start fresh. Let's get a absolute speed rush guy around the edge. James Pierce goes to Atlanta. Jedi Barron goes to the Cardinals. They desperately need help in the secondary, to say the very least, as do the Bengals, who go Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan. Again, excellent player. Some people think he could potentially be better than Barron. He goes to the Bengals to help shore up their back end. I think the Seahawks are absolutely going to go wide receiver in this first round to help Sam Darnold out, to pair next to Jackson Smith and Jigba. So why not get a guy from Jackson Smith and Jigba's alma mater? Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. Michael Williams, edge out of Georgia, goes to Tampa. Again, another team that needs some help on the defensive line. Jaden Higgins goes to the Broncos. Let's help Bo Nix. Bo's got the offensive line. Running game isn't ideal. I could see them going with a running back at this spot at number 20, or just waiting until later in the draft to take their guy. This is one of the deeper running back drafts we've had in recent memory. Let's get Jaden Higgins, pair him next to Cortland Sutton. Broncos with Sean Payton could have a really solid offense in 2025. Next 4 picks, my Pittsburgh Steelers go Josh Connerly, tackle out of Oregon. I think the Steelers don't have a quarterback that they like, and just want to put this on the record, do not draft Jackson Dart. I don't believe in him at all. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. If they don't draft quarterback, they have got to get that offensive line fixed. Josh Connerly, tackle out of Oregon, could help do that. Matthew Golden, receiver out of Texas, goes to the Chargers. Again, I think Seattle and the Chargers kind of have to take a receiver in round 1 or 2. Listen, Lam McConkey is excellent, had a really good rookie year. I still see him as more of a number 2 receiver. Get Matthew Golden in there if he pans out the way that we think he possibly could. That could be a really dangerous tandem with Justin Herbert throwing the football. Maxwell Harrison feels like a Green Bay Packers pick, right? Corner out of Kentucky. We remember, same state, different school, Louisville. When the Packers took Jair Alexander out of Louisville, we were like, that's a weird pick. Aaron Rodgers could maybe use some help on the outside. Well, that wasn't necessarily wrong, but Jair Alexander ended up being a really good pick. It's kind of dissolved as of late, but he was an excellent player at his peak in Green Bay. Maxwell Harrison, I'm not saying he'll be as good as Alexander, but that's a pretty Green Bay Packers pick. They've got the weapons on the outside and the run game. They need help defensively. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, goes to the Vikings. Need to shore up the interior on the defensive line. Tyler Booker is a reach. I get it at 25. I understand. But all the great tackles are off the board by this point. At least the guys with a solid first-round grade, a consistent first-round grade across the board. Tyler Booker is a guard out of Alabama. Probably have more of a second-round pick, but again, it's more of a need draft as opposed to best player available. I think the Houston Texans are in a spot where, for reasons I'm not entirely sure, I know there's some reports about showing up late for practice. Laramie Tunsil is one of the premier left tackles in the NFL. You don't just trade that guy. So I did not agree with that decision at all. I get Booker's not a tackle, and he certainly isn't going to provide what Laramie Tunsil does, but they've got to shore that up. And if we know anything, it's that the best offensive linemen tend to go in the first round. Tyler Booker goes to the Texans. Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan, goes to the Los Angeles Rams, and what an offense that this could be. So Tyler Higbee's obviously has been a consistent guy, good on third down, red zone for the Rams for some time now. But he is 32 years of age. He is getting older. Colston Loveland is the second best tight end in this draft. You pair him now with Devontae Adams, with Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Matt Stafford throwing the football. The offensive line for the Rams has been rebuilt over the last couple of years. They could go defense right here with the Rams. That's why I had them going in the last mock draft. But right now, I think Colston Loveland would really, really suit that offense quite well. Shamar Stewart falls all the way to 27 to a team that does defense quite well, the Baltimore Ravens. That could be scary, certainly for my Pittsburgh Steelers division, the AFC North, and certainly for the rest of the AFC in general. So Shamar Stewart goes to the Ravens. Derek Harmon goes to the Detroit Lions, defensive tackle out of Oregon. I think the Lions, I don't think any of us would blame them if they just go chalk defense across the board in this draft, maybe take like a running back in the 6th round or something. The Lions are just fine offensively. Defensively is a totally different story. Last 4 picks of the first round. Azaria Thomas, corner out of Florida State, goes to Washington. Again, a team that desperately needs help across the board defensively, particularly in the secondary. Pair him up with Marshawn Lattimore. That could be potentially a solid duo with the Commanders. I have Mike Green, edge rusher out of Marshall, going to the Buffalo Bills. Last mock draft, same case here. Again, Von Miller, that didn't work the way that the Bills thought. They thought that it would. If you could give Josh Allen, and this matters for quarterbacks, guy I look up to, Colin Cowherd, has said it, the number one job of a GM in the NFL: get your quarterback, protect your quarterback, and make the other team's quarterback uncomfortable, which is essentially draft quarterback, draft a left tackle, draft a pass rusher. I think Mike Green could potentially be that guy for the Buffalo Bills. Quinshon Judkins, running back at Ohio State, goes to the Chiefs. I had the Chiefs taking receiver Matthew Golden last draft, but right now I think for Kansas City, listen, they've tried Isaiah Pacheco, God bless him, but he's had injuries in recent years. They tried the Kareem Hunt thing again. He was fine. He was a good short yardage back. Nothing more than that. Quinshon Judkins has burst. He would work. But again, you're going to need this Chiefs offensive line had questions to begin with, and now Joe Tooney's gone. Now they kept Trey Smith, my man out of Tennessee, but end of the day, this is a kid who could really give this offense some pop, could really give this offense some could give Patrick Mahomes some stability as it pertains to his run game. Quinshon Judkins to the Chiefs, and Jahad Campbell falls all the way to the Philadelphia Eagles, linebacker out of Alabama. That's scary. That is the Eagles are really the only team in this first round that you sit there and say, they don't really have a weakness. Just take the best player on the board at that point at 32. That is my mock draft 2.0. We can go back and look over my 2.0 mock draft just to run back through it. I've got Cam Ward going to the Titans. No surprise there. Travis Hunter to the Browns. Abdul Carter to the Giants. Will Campbell to the Patriots. Then you go next 4. Mason Graham to the Jags. Ashton Genty to the Raiders. Kelvin Banks to the Jets. Jalen Walker to the Panthers. Shador Sanders goes to the Saints. I feel as confident in that as I have. I thought the Saints were the only team outside of the top 5 until my Steelers that could draft Shador Sanders with the Derek Carr injury. Certainly not going to say it's formality. Trades happen. Anything could happen. But right now, I feel like that's the most likely destination for Shador. Amarian Hampton to the Bears. Armand Membo to the Niners. Ted McMillan to the Cowboys. Josh Simmons to the Dolphins. Tyler Warren to the Colts. James Pierce to the Falcons. Jedi Barron to the Cardinals. Will Johnson to the Bengals, Mika Ibuka to the Seahawks, Michael Williams to the Buccaneers, Jaden Higgins to the Broncos, Josh Connolly to my Steelers, Matthew Golden to the Chargers, Maxwell Hairston to the Packers, Walter Nolan to the Vikings, Tyler Booker, again, I know it's a reach, but to the Texans, Colston Loveland to the Rams, Shamar Stewart to Baltimore, Derek Harmon to Detroit, final 4 picks, Azaria Thomas to the Commanders, Mike Green to the Bills, Quinshon Judkins to the Chiefs, and Jahad Campbell to the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, folks might think I hate defensive linemen on the show because I have Mason Graham falling to 15 last mock draft. I kind of corrected that here, him going number 5 to Jacksonville. And then Jahad Campbell, who some people think is like a top 15 pick potentially. Some people have him really high on their board, falling all the way to the Philadelphia Eagles. Lord, if there's one thing that team does not have a shortage on, it's good defensive linemen. That can make it even scarier. And Jihad's more of a 3-4 guy, so, obviously see how that plays out. We just got, while I was doing mock drafts, we just got some breaking news out of the NBA. Now, this isn't breaking news at the time that this is airing, which is about 6:43 Eastern Standard Time. But at 12:06 Eastern Standard Time, this broke, 4 minutes ago from Shams Charania, and then immediately after by Chris Haynes. The Phoenix Suns have fired Mike Budenholzer after finishing 11th place with a 36-46 record in his one season, sources tell ESPN. Listen, I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so on the Phoenix Suns for the last 2 years. They made the finals in 21, lost to Milwaukee, came back the next year, won 65 games. I think they won 65 games. And then we all know what happened in the Game 7 against Dallas when Chris Paul famously hit a 3 to cut the lead to 42, as the meme became born. But the sky wasn't falling. As a matter of fact, less than a year later, they did a little something and acquired Kevin Durant. And at that point, I'm thinking, man, Chris Paul, Booker, KD, Ayton, this is a nice foursome here with the Suns. Even if they don't win it this year, at that point, 2023, because of all the depth, maybe not enough defenders, this is a team you can really build around. This is a team that can contend for the Western Conference. And new owner syndrome struck in as devastating a way as you could possibly imagine with the Phoenix Suns. This new guy takes over and decides, you know what? Here's what we should do. We were an irrelevant, dead, no one cared about us type of franchise from 2010 to 2020. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to trade the guy who made us relevant and who was the best player on our NBA Finals run in 2021, Chris Paul. Let's trade him for Bradley Beal, who at that point was a better player than he certainly is now. But that rid them of a point guard, and it gave them a wing scorer, which they already had two of. And the team made no sense. They then dealt DeAndre Ayton. Again, I get there was issues with Monty Williams, but then you fire Monty Williams for Frank Vogel. And by the way, the issues with Ayton and Vogel, with Ayton and what's my man's name? Monty Williams. The issues with those two, get rid of one. Don't get rid of both. They're both really good. I know Monty Williams had a bad year in Detroit, but Monty Williams is good with the Suns. We're going to fire Monty Williams, and they were going to trade DeAndre Ayton for Yusuf Nurkic. Huh? The guy who can't stay healthy, the guy who's a playoff liability. That's what we're going to do. That's our long-term plan. Okay, and then the Vogel thing isn't going to work, so we're just going to cut him off after 1 year, after we at least made the playoffs, and then bring in Mike Budenholzer, who was always the weak link of that Milwaukee run, even when they won the title in 2021. That was a Giannis, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, and then to a degree, Brook Lopez-led Bucks run. That Mike Budenholzer had very little to do with the Bucks championship in 2021 to the levels of which we haven't seen in NBA history. And for the Suns as a franchise now, you say Shams tweeted it, 36-46, 11th in the West, couldn't even make the play-in tournament. They're going to deal KD. KD had some interaction on social media with the fan where they basically acknowledged and shook hands on social media. KD is not going to be a Sun next year, and we can talk about that during the offseason. But we are in a spot right now where I think I heard the other day where the Suns have not had a coach last, I forget if it was last 4 years or last more than 4 years, since like the 70s. Like, you think that's attractive for an incoming coach? We're not sure. Booker's going to be a Sun next year. I don't think anyone will crush Booker. If he's gone, they'll crush KD just because it's another failed super team experiment. But in defense of KD in this spot, the Suns, when he joined them, were a well-run franchise. We're a well-coached. We're a roster that was put together in a form and fashion that could compete for a title. Came 2 wins away from doing it less than 2 years before KD got there. And so for them to self-destruct as an organization has been unreal. It all started with the Bradley Beal trade. Listen, you can go back and look. I called it from the moment that it happened. This is a devastating trade for Phoenix. It has sunk their franchise. And it's been a domino effect since then. Not say I told you so, but I told you so. Frank Vogel, good coach. I thought he was unfairly canned, especially for Darvin Ham with the Lakers in 2022. But that wasn't going to be the coach that got you over the top. Again, I think Monty Williams was that guy. So keep Monty Williams and then move on from DeAndre Ayton. Or if you're going to fire Monty Williams, keep DeAndre Ayton. He's really good. He's double threat every single night. He's an excellent big. I'm not going to make it out to be like he's like Jokic or something, but he's a good player. He's a good big. One of the top 10 guys in the league at his position. And so, listen, new owner syndrome strikes again. We saw it with, was it Prokhorov was the guy's name with the Nets when he made the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett trade that ended up getting the Celtics, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. It's a real thing. And so, I'm not sure where Phoenix goes from here. They're in a rough spot. At this point, it's just, let's just acquire as many assets as possible and try and rebuild this thing and see if we can keep a coach a half decade. Let's see if we can pull that off, because in the last 50 years, that's something that the Suns have simply not been able to do. Not to say I told you so, but I told you so. See, I didn't expect to talk about that, but listen, it doesn't come as a shock. Again, like I said, this show is being pre-recorded, so that's why I'm mentioning that was breaking news. But that's where we're at. That's where we're at. So the Suns are once again in a rebuild. Tale as old as time. Transitioning now, but you know what? Before I get to play-in predictions, there's 4 play-in games tomorrow and on Wednesday. I just wanted to briefly go over and detail a message that I have for one group in particular. So there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of talk over the last few years or so about, why is the NBA not quite as popular as it used to be? Right? Like, why are the TV ratings not there? Why are they not? There's been folks saying, why can't they beat the NFL? Because nobody can beat the NFL. They're the kings of television. That's just, NFL took Christmas from the NBA. I mean, they are bent on world domination. It is Roger Goodell's world. We are all just living in it. But people have talked about, the NBA. People said load management, which there was an aspect of load management that was understandably so a turnoff for some people, especially when you compared it to the likes of a Kobe Bryant, who famously his wife Vanessa, God bless her, mentioned that Kobe would tell her even when he was nicked up and felt bad and didn't feel like he could go. He said, "There's that one family. I think she said this. There's that one family that's never seen me play. There's that one kid that's never seen me play. I have an obligation to show up and play basketball to the best of my abilities." And so, for the modern day players, guys like Kawhi Leonard, who have, load management has been a story with him. And Kawhi, by the way, balled yesterday against my Warriors and has been balling. But that's been a story for Kawhi Leonard, for other stars in the NBA. I get how that was a turnoff. But load management really isn't a problem this year. The only guys that really missed significant amounts of time, be it LeBron James, Steph Curry, Luka, to a lesser degree, Paolo Banchero, was because of legit injuries. Jokic played a bunch of games. Tatum did. Steph did. Like, that wasn't really a problem in the league this year. Shea did, who's going to be the MVP this year. And so people talk about, it's politics. Guys, every league talks about politics. So that's been a straw man from the jump. The biggest deterrent to the NBA growing more than it has. And for the record, attendance is off the charts in the NBA. Okay, people still care about the league. Let's just make sure we can put that in its perspective. When we get a LeBron James, Steph Curry second round, check those ratings and see how popular the NBA is. Okay, the league's doing just fine. But the reason it can't grow further than it has now, the NBA media. I think there's two prime examples of this. Well, three. One is just pure stupidity. Like, I saw a video on YouTube that said, from a prominent sports network, that said the thumbnail had the caption, "Is Giannis washed?" I'm not kidding. You can look this up. You'll see what the network is. That was what the thumbnail said. Is Giannis washed? Giannis, who was very well could finish third in MVP this year, the Bucks should be a lottery team right now. The coach isn't good. They lost Dame. Bobby Portis has missed time. They should be dead in the water. And here's Giannis Antetokounmpo going out there. He's been balling as of late, but dropping 30, 11, and 6. Really 30 and 12 and 6 if you round up over the course of the season, shooting, 60% from the field. If that's washed, Giannis must be the greatest player ever. So some of it's pure stupidity. Another aspect of it is a problem we see sometimes in, really both cases, or what we see sometimes in politics, or at least political coverage in the media. The first of which is when they see themselves as bigger than the story. And that's kind of like the cardinal sin of journalism, right? And again, I'm no journalist. I don't aspire to be. I aspire to be a sports talk commentator. But the cardinal sin of journalism, you are not bigger than the story. The columnist is not bigger than the headline. And we've seen a slight shift in the discussion around Bronny James, which bled into what it bled into about a month ago. And I talked about that on my show. And folks trying to lecture the face of the league, and has been for 2 decades, LeBron James, on how to be a dad, which, as any half-decent dad would do, led LeBron to get a little pissed. And he responded the way that he did. Not with violence, not with anything, beyond the pale. He told Stephen A., keep my son's name out your mouth. And then Stephen A. responded, and Stephen A. went in this tour, I'd have give it a second chance, I'd have swung on it. Bro, come on. Is a self-importance by the media that I'm becoming very disturbed by. And to me, even more damage. I have become so irritated by this. I literally rated my friend Barry Grant Jr.'s show 2 weeks ago over the phone. I was so irritated by this. I'm fine with discussions, with debates, barbershop talk. Oh, who's better? 2017 Warriors, 96 Bulls. Who's the greatest? LeBron, Jordan. Oh, what about Kobe? Like, I'm fine with those. They're fun. not at the expense of talking about the games that are happening right now, particularly when the playoffs are starting this coming weekend. So I advise, I beg, I plead with the NBA media as a whole, and you know who you are. Let's keep it about the athletes. Let's keep it about the games. Let's stop trying to appease some agenda that you're trying to fulfill to make your era better than it was. Your era was great. The era you covered the league was great. The players were great. So were these. Listen, again, fine with comparisons. Can we do that when that particular player series is over? Can we do it especially when the playoffs are over? Because, folks, when the finals end in mid-June, we're in it from mid-June till Labor Day, where it's mostly going to be maybe some WNBA stories, the occasional baseball story, and that's about it. That period is tough to come up with topics on shows like mine. We will have plenty of time to get into those Magic Steph discussions, LeBron Jordan discussions, recently Jokic Shaq discussions. We'll have plenty of time to get into those. Can we stick to the playoffs? Can we stick to what's going to be as exhilarating and as exciting a 7-game series across the board, particularly in the Western Conference, as we're going to see in the next 2 months? I don't know what we're going to get in the finals. I'm pretty sure Boston's going to be in the finals. But regardless of who Boston plays, that's going to be an awesome series in June. Let's enjoy that. You know what the NFL does not do? Or what the NFL media does not do? Patrick Mahomes in the 1970s, could he have survived the Steel Curtain defense? We don't do that. We compare Mahomes to Brady. Those are discussions, but we don't say could Mahomes have worked in this era. We don't say could Myles Garrett have gotten to the quarterback against the Great Wall of Dallas? Heck, I don't know. Probably a couple times. I don't know. He's great. They're great. Who knows? It's never going to happen. Never has happened. Never will happen. I don't know. Go on Madden and see if you can. I don't know. Doesn't make me view Myles Garrett or the Great Wall of Dallas any less. Doesn't make me view Mahomes or the Steel Curtain any less. We don't do that in the NFL. We do it in the NBA. Oh, who'd have won one-on-one? Braun or Jordan? I don't really care. We can do who's the better player. That's the more entertaining discussion. But let's do that after the playoffs. Let's do that after LeBron and the Lakers season ends, be it in the first round, second round, finals, whenever. Let's do those later. This is a great time. It's the best time for the NBA. It's what they bank their entire popularity on. It's at the regular season. It's 82 games. It's a treadmill. It's a long run. It's kind of like, let's just get to the playoffs. And then once we're there, we get amazing basketball for 2 months. Let's enjoy that. Let's not focus on old, tired, lazy, uncreative narratives to appease some agenda that you have to submit to Jordan, because I don't know. And for the love of God, you are not, and I'm not just talking to Stephen A. I'm talking in general. You, me, no one is more important than the on-court product or the fans. That's what this thing is about. Let's remember that. That is my message for the NBA media as we enter what is going to be an incredible 2 months of basketball. Let's focus on that. Let's enjoy that for what it is. Because like I said, once the finals are over, till football season begins, kind of a dry period. I mean, we got the NBA draft and free agency. It's kind of a dry period. Not a lot of consistent topics over the course of that time period. So there you go. I had to get that off my chest. I've just become really, really irritated with how this has gone and how this has shifted. I think this has been a really entertaining NBA regular season, more than most. And instead, we've gotten to storylines like, is LeBron James being a good enough dad for letting his son play in the league that he was drafted into? Like, it's just dumb. So let's enjoy the games. Speaking of the games, let's talk about them. So, play-in tournament begins tomorrow night. We've got the 7-8 matchups in the Eastern Conference and in the Western Conference. And then on Wednesday, we've got the 9-10 matchups in the East and West, respectively. So for those that are maybe not familiar with the play-in, I think is this the fifth year? The fifth year that the current play-in has been instituted. It actually began in the bubble in 2020 during the COVID period. From 2021 to now, this is the fifth NBA play-in tournament. Way it works, top 6 seeds, automatic bids to the playoffs. 7 versus 8, play. Winner of that game is the 7 seed in the playoffs. 9-10 play. The winner of that game plays the loser of 7 versus 8. The winner of that game is the 8 seed. That's basically how it works. And so, listen, I've always been pro play-in. I think that unless you're just a horrible team, unless you're like the Wizards or something, it halts tanking, or at least suspends tanking for some teams that are like, you know what? Maybe some postseason experience could be good for our young guys. And we're probably not going to make the playoffs anyway, but it's good experience. It's good for our culture, playing these high-leverage games. You could be potentially playing a Steph Curry. You could be playing, a current, younger, excellent player like a Trae Young or a Paolo Banchero. So it's good for our franchise, good for our team, and good for something that we can build off of. And we're probably still going to be in the lottery. I mean, I believe the Hawks were in the play-in last year. Hawks got the number 1 pick. Now, that's rare, but that happens. And so... listen, the only change I'd make to the play-in, if you look at the stands, and then we'll get into the games, but if you look at the Eastern Conference, it's relatively close. So the Hawks are a game back of the Magic. The Bulls are a game back of the Hawks. The Heat are 2 games back of the Bulls. So it's pretty close as far as the 4 play-in teams. Western Conference, that is not the case. The Golden State Warriors and Memphis Grizzlies have the same record, 48-34. The 9-seed Kings are 8 games back. And then the Mavs, 9 games back. I think there should be an instituted, you have to be minimum 3 games back, or max of 3 games back of your opponent, of the 7-8 seed, in order for there to be a play-in at all. Because the Sacramento Kings, who are 2 games under 500, and the Mavs, who are 4 games under 500, against the Warriors and Grizzlies, who are 14 games over 500, should not have not an equivalent chance to make the playoffs, but close to it. Essentially, the 14 games over 500 Warriors or Grizzlies should not have to play a do-or-die win-or-go-home game this Friday against a team that's under 500. That should not be the case. So I think 3 games max. If you're not 3 games behind, if the 9 seed is not at least 3 games back of the 7-8, there's no play-in. Like the East, there would be a play-in. It's close. West, don't think there should be. But it doesn't matter because my Warriors are going to advance. It's a spoiler. Let's get into the play-in predictions. Here we go. Because first we start out east. It's about 40 minutes from where I'm at right now. We got the Atlanta Hawks taking off the Orlando Magic at the Kia Center, where I actually saw Steph Curry drop 56 on the Magic. That was something to behold. But anyways, the Magic are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Listen, Hawks 2 games below 500. Magic are at 500. Look, this is, I thought Orlando, based on what I saw last year, based on the development of Paolo, who I've been a fan of since he was at Duke, was something that could develop into a surprise Eastern Conference Finals contender, the way that we saw with the Pacers last year in their slow build. They're a very, very different team from the Pacers. They're more of a, Pacers are high octane, run and gun, up the floor, don't play a ton of defense. Magic are the exact opposite. They're a very slow, grinded out, great defensive team. Paolo gets his 27 to 30 points, and then everybody kind of follows suit. And so, listen, I like Orlando in this matchup. I think Paolo goes crazy. I don't love Atlanta's defense. Give me the Magic in this game to win 107 to 103. I'll give the Hawks plus 5.5. I think 5.5 is a little too many points in this matchup. So I'll take Atlanta plus 5.5 with the Magic to win this one. They would then become the 7 seed and face the Boston Celtics. And that, my friends, is a quick series, to say the very least. All right. Speaking of, this is not a series, it's a play-in game, but a game that is not going to be particularly competitive. The Memphis Grizzlies and my Golden State Warriors. Warriors are a 6.5-point home favorite. The game tips off tomorrow night. So, listen, there's been a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of, but some folks in the media, they're like, dang, you know, it would have been good for the Warriors if they could have survived this Clippers game, been the 6th seed, the old guys, Steph, Draymond, Butler, get essentially a week off. I think I saw the schedule where if the Warriors win this game against Memphis, they don't have to play till Sunday. So I would almost contend, based on matchups, listen, I would have obviously take the Warriors to beat the Lakers in a 7-game series. The Warriors are my pick to win it all. The Lakers, I think, are the biggest threat to that. Might as well get the Lakers out of the way quickly. But the counter argument to that is, well, if you beat Memphis, essentially get 4 days off, Wednesday through Saturday, 4 days off before you go to Houston to play the Rockets on Sunday night. Oh, yeah, Rockets team that has never beaten Steph Curry in a 7-game playoff series. And this current version of the Rockets, some of the cast of characters outside of Fred VanVleet have not been very successful against the Warriors. See Ime Udoka in the 2022 finals. See Dillon Brooks. Well, really, anytime he plays the Warriors, that's just not what they do. And then beside that, they have excellent, talented young players. We'll get to that later. We'll get to that on Friday. This matchup, I don't know. Memphis has been on a streak where I think the record is they've lost 18 of their last 31 games or something along those lines. Like, they have played bad basketball. They fired their head coach, Taylor Jenkins. The biggest discussion around the Grizzlies is Ja's hand grenade celebration. I mean, it's been a mess of a second half of the season. Jaren Jackson, Tails all his time, cannot stay out of foul trouble. He cannot get to 30 minutes in a big, high-leverage game. The Warriors will be fine. My only concern for Golden State really is Jimmy Butler's health. He banged knees with Kawhi Leonard at the end of yesterday's game in overtime and was kind of gimpy the rest of the game. Jimmy said he'd be fine. He is an older player, but we saw playoff Jimmy. He scored 30 against the Clippers in a big game. He scored, I believe, it was 27-28 against the Memphis Grizzlies the last time they faced, when Steph Curry just decided to go a cool 52-10-8 against Memphis. So safe to say the Warriors will be just fine in this game. The Warriors will win this one comfortably, 119-102. Golden State has the best defense in the league since trading for Jimmy Butler in terms of defensive rating. They will get the job done against the Memphis Grizzlies, 119-102. They will easily cover the 6.5 and get to the 7 seed to play the Houston Rockets. And that, my friends, might as well be a bye for Golden State. All right, so back to the Eastern Conference. Wednesday's game, 7 versus 10. Loser of this game is Dunzo. Their season is over. Miami Heat, Chicago Bulls. Listen, Miami has fallen apart since the Jimmy trade. They had a little streak where they're playing decent basketball. I'm always going to pull for my man Andrew Wiggins, even though he's a part of the Jimmy trade. He helped us win a title in 2022. Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA, but there's only so much you can do. Bulls have played really good basketball as of late, and I think if they were, it'd almost be better if the Bulls lost this game long term, because maybe, just maybe, they were to Lang Cooper flag, kind of like the Hawks got the first pick last year. Crazier things have happened, but I like what the Bulls are doing. Kobe White's balling. Josh Giddey's been an excellent fit for that basketball team. Give me the Bulls in this game over the Heat, 102-99. Kind of a grinded out classic Eastern Conference game. Bulls 102, Heat 99. Bulls cover the 1.5, and the Chicago Bulls advance to play the Atlanta Hawks, and that could be a very interesting game on Friday. Last playing game. It just showed you the score right there, but you just saw it for a split second. Dallas Mavericks and Sacramento Kings. The Kings are a 4.5-point favorite. Problem with Sacramento has always been their problem. They can't guard. They can't play defense. And listen, Mike Brown was a great defensive coach. They fired him, so you weren't going to imagine they were going to get any better on that side of the floor. Zach LaVine has been a solid addition. Okay, they got something for De'Aaron Fox. I think Fox is going to flourish in the future with Wemby in San Antonio. But Domantas Sabonis, you can't trust him in these big spots. He's struggled in playoff games, play-in games. So I actually kind of like the Dallas Mavericks to win this game. Listen, you just need one Anthony Davis big-time performance. Dallas plus 4.5, the Mavericks. And listen, what has been truly the season from hell, caused almost entirely by their GM, Nico Harrison, and Mavs fans have every right to leave that fan base and to respond the way that they have post-Luka trade in February. But they get something to cheer for. The Mavericks win this playing game against the Sacramento Kings, and they would then play the Memphis Grizzlies. And I'll be totally straight with y'all. I don't know who I'd pick to win that game. I really, as bad as this Mavs season has gone, they have the best player on the floor, Anthony Davis. AD's obviously better than Ja. Listen, I would probably take Memphis because Baines played better. Jaren Jackson, when he's not fouling you to death, is effective. Ja, when he's not distracted, and that's rare, is effective. You know. But then again, Jason Kidd's the better coach. Like, I don't know. All I know is whoever wins that game is getting thumped by Oklahoma City in the first round. Like, that's the downside. Aside from the Warriors beating Memphis and playing 2-seed Houston, which, again, even if the Memphis Grizzlies were to win, they'd push Houston. Houston would win, but they push Houston. And I will say this on the front end, or on the back end of the show as well, to end the show before we get out of here, because I've taken some shots on social media. You know what? I'll take it. I invite it. I'll take it. About, you picked the Warriors to win the title. They're in the play-in. Need I remind you that the 7-seed Lakers made the conference finals in 2023, and the Miami Heat made the NBA finals in 2023. Both were play-in teams. The Heat actually had to play the second play-in game on their home floor against the Chicago Bulls. So people talking about the play-in is like a death sentence, especially if Golden State gets Houston in the first round. I think you need to slow that roll just a little bit. I will say this, though. Because you know how little respect I have for Memphis as an organization, but also as they've played currently. If somehow, some way, on their home floor with a significantly better basketball team, if the Warriors find a way to lose the Grizzlies, who have fired their coach, who are playing a flawed team, a distracted team, a team that's played as bad as anybody down the stretch of the season that isn't tanking, if they manage to lose that basketball game tomorrow night, done. You win. They're not my pick anymore. Now, at that point, I don't get a pick because Denver was my pick going into the season, but my caveat was the Warriors are my pick. If they had an all-star player next to Steph, they did. They were my pick. And then in that case, based on the caveat I laid back in October, but then there is no pick. That's I'll pick the series, obviously. I'll pick the finals, and that I guess will be my pick then. But as far as a preseason pick, no, dead, gone. Kind of like I did with the Broncos in 2022. Worst take I've ever had in the history of the show. Don't want to talk about it. All right. That is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live. We're actually going to do, or at least try to do, a live show on Friday night. I'll likely have a post-game reaction video that'll come up on Wednesday. Again, now that the NBA playoffs are coming in, again, folks that have followed the show know that I'm in Orlando for the Disney College program, and that has certainly lessened my ability to kind of do what I've been able to do in terms of what's up, my man? Less of my ability in terms of what I've been able to do with my scheduling as far as my show, not able to do multiple shows a week. So in this spot, I'm able to once the playoffs come around, more content, more things to talk about. I don't want to wait a full week for some of these series to play out. So that's why I'm going to do all those different things. So post-game reaction for the Warriors. That's likely not going to be a show. It's mostly just going to be a segment that airs on Wednesday. So I'll put that out there. And then we are going to try very hard to do a live show on Friday night, preferably at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, our regular scheduled programming for that day, and discuss NBA playoff matchups. At that point, we'll have 6 of the 8 set. And then the 1 seed will likely crush the winner of the last playing game on both sides of the bracket. Although it is Cleveland. So, knowing Cleveland sports history, you never know. I'm going to probably pick the Cavs, but it is Cleveland. I mean, what are we talking about? It's Cleveland. So, there we go. Appreciate everybody tuning in as always. Be sure to catch Carving Up Live. Again, we hope to on Friday night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, my YouTube channel, Carving It Up, the Grid Network's YouTube channel, the Grid Network's X account. Cannot wait. NBA playoffs on tap. Masters were amazing yesterday. Shout out to Rory McIlroy. Nico Iamaleava out of Tennessee. I gave my take on that on the NCAA earlier in the show. Mock draft, NFL drafts in a week and a half. This is a great time to be a sports fan. Let's enjoy it. Let's have fun with it. And let's not talk about how stupid narratives that the NBA media is trying to implement just to protect the legacy of one Michael Jeffrey Jordan. All right, that's my message to end the show. See everybody on Friday. Hopefully, stay safe out there. Stay safe out there, everybody. God bless y'all. Peace out. And the Warriors will be just fine. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.